We are here to discuss SQL Server security. No, but before we get started, I just want to let you know. Last week I was at Microsoft campus as part of the MVP summit. By the way, you guys can hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. I'm trying a new headset here. So every year, Microsoft invites us over to the campus, and we get a chance to meet with the program managers. And I call it going back to the mothership. Always love going back to the mothership once a year. And I had the chance this year to once again do that. I've been MVP for 5 years and had a wonderful time. In fact, I've got some photos for you guys. If you haven't seen, I've been displaying these throughout the my Twitter feeds and LinkedIn accounts. But had a few photos here, and we had a party on our last evening. And it was in an area called the Commons, and they have, I believe, like 30 restaurants. And so I went around there taking photos. They also have stores. You can ski and resort. And this is one of my favorites. They have First One Tech, their own credit union there at the Microsoft campus. They have their own post office. They probably have their own fire station as well. I didn't see that. They even have Verizon AT&T stores. I found that pretty interesting. All kinds of restaurants, from noodle bowls to seafood to soups to pizza, you name it, they had it. This is the Access Group here. We got the Lunchbox restaurant there at the MVP conference. So it was just a wonderful experience. Now, this is the Microsoft store where I purchased a lot of goodies, and they have this display with Halo there, which I thought pretty nice. And at the conference, I was able to do a Channel 9 video with fellow MVP and Access Web Apps Chapter President Andy Tevez. And so that will be coming out shortly. We talked about a really nice technique about launching reports from Access Web Apps. And one of the things that you notice when you're on the campus is you get to drink as much pop and soda and milk as you want. They have these coolers all over the place, and oh my gosh, it was great to go in there. I had a cooler there at the office where we did the access sessions that had coconut water. So I was chugging those while I was there. That was pretty good. That was pretty neat. So, and it was autumn, so of course the autumn colors were in full force. I really loved those. Now, as part of the meeting, I can't share much, if not at all, because they make us sign 30 pages of an NDA. Pretty much says that if we reveal any details, we have to give them our firstborn. So, but I can share with you some wonderful news, and that is the desktop development is back on board, which is really exciting because, in the past years, I've wrote about this in my blog. In the past years, every time I would go, I would sit between the Excel guys in one room and the Word guys in the other, and you hear these whoops, and applause, and hell yeah, throughout the conference. And, our conference was pretty stale, and they didn't have anything new for us to show us, and it was all web apps, and that wasn't really good. I have yet to create a web app in Access that's mission critical, and I refuse to do so because, quite frankly, web apps is not ready for prime time.
For sure.
But this year it's different. This year we've got the Access a new team there, a new Access Vice General Manager, and also some team members that really get it. And one of the things that they promised to do is increase communication. And one of the things they're doing is the Access User Voice. And so if I come in here, I don't have the exact URL. Let's see if I can come up here and see that URL for you. There's a Access here, access.uservoice.com. I urge you to lend your voice because the Access team does read this, and they do can respond. And one of the things that they have already done is updated some suggestions to take into consideration and so forth. So please go through here, lend your voice. You have to sign in, and then once you sign in, then it allows you to post ideas or vote on ideas. And the Access team does read these. Trust me, they do. That's one of the things that we talked about at the conference. So I'm going to see if I can give you a link to that. Let me put it in the chat comments here. All right. And there's my first link of the evening. So please go to that and lend your voice to the Access team. I don't have any more specific details. I mean, I saw a lot of things, new technology. I'm hoping to share some stuff with you in December. They promised me that they'll release something in December. I can't even tell you what category it is, what it is, but I was really impressed with the technology. And it's already leaked to the press, but technically I still can't share it with you guys. And then in terms of access, I'm expecting a lot of good things out of this team. And I'm a positive guy, and that's what I'm thinking. Some people there have a more negative attitude, and they say, "Well, we've heard this before. We've been excited before, and they let us down. But let's hope that this time is different." So one of the things that I'm always looking for is some good MVP candidates, right? So I'm always advocating, especially women. We need more women access MVPs, and I've already submitted to some candidates for them to consider. So I'm hoping that you guys who listen to this step up by presenting. You can present on any of our Access user groups. Just approach the chapter president. So if you want to do a SQL Server with Access presentation later this year, I'm all for that. And you welcome guest presenters, and that goes towards your MVP qualifications, right? Whether you present here, any help you provide online on the forums, any SQL Saturdays that you may do, all is considered as your body of work. And if you do enough of it, then you should become an MVP. I say should because we don't know the secret sauce. They keep it vague on purpose.
Yes.
So we don't know what exactly goes into being an MVP. All we know is that if you do this, this, and that, you're most likely to become an Access MVP. And you can join me next year. So please keep that in mind. So today we're going to talk about security, how to leverage the Active Directory and SQL Server security to secure your data. Now, I may have shown you some of these slides in the past, so I'm just going to quickly go through these and then get to the real meat and potatoes of this. And gosh darn, sometimes I walk into a new client and they're storing credit cards and their Access database, and I just smack their hand to the head and say, you can't do that. You can't store Social Security information in Access. You can't store sensitive information. That's a big no-no. It's so easy to walk out of the enterprise by copying the Access database to a USB drive. So moving your data to SQL Server will afford you world-class security if you follow best practices. Now, there's two security models I'm going to be talking today. There's the Active Directory users and groups that tie into SQL Server, and then SQL Server logins. And so one of the things that I do when I do this topic at SQL Saturdays, I ask the audience, well, what do you think is more secure, right? A show of hands. Do you think it's Active Directory or is it SQL Server? And almost always people say it's Active Directory, and unfortunately that's not the case. If I grant you credentials from your Active Directory to a table or database in SQL Server, what I've done is I've opened it to all the surfaces that can connect to SQL Server. One of them is Excel, right? So if I grant you access to the Active Directory and the Active Directory login is associated with a group in SQL Server that has rights to the credit card table, well, guess what? I can open Excel and retrieve those records into Excel and walk out of the building with them. So you got to be careful with that because with Active Directory, you've given up the farm in terms of that, and now you have to be more nuanced in terms of the security. Now with SQL Server logins, what I've done in the past is we create one SQL Server login for the Access application that's stored with the Access database. It's encrypted, and so the user doesn't know what it is. And instead, I use a user table to validate the user, right? So the user logs in with a user table and a store procedure, and then they can't go to Excel, enter the data, download it. So it's a much more secure environment. So you got to be cognizant of which one you pick. Now, Active Directory is great for convenience. So let's say, for example, you set up these three user groups: admin, power user, read only. Just set up an Active Directory. And then you authenticate these Windows groups to roles in your application on SQL Server. Well, what ends up happening is when the employee starts at the company, the network admin can just add them to the corresponding groups on the Active Directory, and that automatically grants them the privileges on SQL Server. So they don't have to know anything about SQL Server. Frequently, the network administrator So there's nothing about SQL Server because these days IT is so compartmentalized. So what you do is you train the network admin and says, hey, when you have a new user and you want them to be an admin of the system, just add them to the admin group. If they need to be a power user, them to this and so forth. And that's really fairly straightforward. And so you don't have to go into SQL Server, go into Security SQL Server, add the user into a group, and then see how they handle. And then you don't have to deal with none of that stuff. And likewise, if they retire, they get fired, or they leave the company, is very easy for them to remove them from the database because they remove them from Active Directory. So that's some of the benefits. I already went over some of them. And so, and then we talked about Excel, the problems with Excel, and so it really can be difficult if you have some sensitive data. You want to be sure how you handle that. All right, so the SQL Server security, on the other hand, it's all handled in SQL Server, right? So you have a login and a password. So you're not using the access credentials. You're not using your Windows credentials, right? So my login to use the database in SQL Server security does not have to be my Windows login, right? It could be anything I want, right? So if I choose as Darth Vader 1 as my username, and then Princess Leia as my password, then I can do that, right? So, and in this case, you can have access login for the user, and then use user table for security. All right, so that's for the presentation I had. It goes on to delve with some other stuff, in particular, really nice video. So I'm using my Surface 2 here at the office, and I'm going to show you how this works. And the first thing I want to show you is when I'm logged into my SQL Server Management Studio using my laptop here, and I'm running SQL Server on the Surface. It's not a real laptop, it's Surface 2. So I log in with the SAM, because if I log in with my Windows security and I revoke myself, I can't get back in. So I created a password for SA and logged in as system administrator SA, right? Now, there's several aspects of the SQL Server security. Number one is that security is handled at the server level under the security group. So you have your list of databases here, and then you got security and then logins. Now, if you notice, there are some logins here, and this is my login for my laptop. And I have some groups that I've created, and I'm going to create a group here shortly called Managers, and I'll show you how that works. But more importantly here, you also have server roles. Now, one of the things that I've done in the past is the security is no big deal. What I've done is I use the public role, and I grant permissions to the public role. And so let me see if I can demo that to you now. I was playing with this earlier. Let's see if I can. No, I still have permissions to that table. Get out and go back in.
How was that doing that? Like, what?
Let me go back and go back in. Sometimes I get that message to drive this user. Okay. Let me see if I can. Companies. Yeah, I still have permission set. So let me go ahead and look at the company. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly go into that database, RCPBE, and I've got TVL companies here. I'm going to go right-click and say Properties. So if you ever want to know who has access to a table, you can right-click on the table, select Properties, and then go to the Permissions tab here, and you can see who has permissions. Now, I was playing with this earlier, and I may have messed up something here. So I'm going to pick another table. I'm going to do Contacts here, and I'm going to right-click on Properties and go to Permissions. And here you'll see the public row. So let's check all the rights that person in the public row has on TBL Contacts. So including the select here. And update. So I got no rights, right? So I click on OK. Now if I go into Access, and I'll bring up TBL Contacts next. I go in here. I do have rights to TBL Contacts still because it's still open in there. But let me just show you on the server level. here what I've done is I've created these grant statements. So grant select on TBO companies to public, TBO companies to insert, right? So you got three rights. You got select, insert, and delete. So obviously, if you have select only and you don't
Of
have
course I
insert,
can't
then
keep
you
what
only
you're
read
doing.
only, right? It's only read only to the table. So if I execute this SQL statement, basically execute, and then go into CBO companies and right-click and set properties, then I look at the permissions. Now I have permissions to public, and I only have one permission, and that is the select permission. Okay. So with that, it's only read-only, right? So now if I go into my access data, now who is the company? Keep in mind that anybody who has a log into SQL Server is a member of the public group, excuse me. So now if I go into companies here and then I go into, see if I can let me add a test company here, test 2. Now it got revoked, right? So you only have select statement. I don't have a insert, right? ODBC insert fails. If I, on the other hand, I close this table, go back into SQL Server, and now grant insert to the public row, execute that, and now go back into Access, bring up the table, go to a new record, and then do test 2. And come here. Now I was able to add it. See that? So now I was able to add the record to TBO companies because I had the insert property. But however, I don't have delete. So if I tried to delete the record I just inserted, it won't let me. If I go back to the server and I add that right to the public group, execute that. Now I go back into Access, press delete, and now notice the difference. Right before, when I tried delete, it would just tell me, no, you can't delete. Now I can actually delete, so I'll press enter to say yes, and now it's gone. So the select, insert, and delete privileges are different privileges that you have to provide to a user. And I'm getting some people talking down here, so I'm going to mute everybody here. So as always, I need to, let's see here. I need to do something. Let me go. I'll just stop screen sharing real quick here, and then go to participant. Oh, there you go. I'll go back into screen sharing. All right. So the public group is great. Right? That's a natural role in SQL Server. So anybody who's in the public group, anybody who's got login, belongs to the public group. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to revoke these 3. And now they're revoked. When I go into Access, let's see if it lets me even open the table. It lets me open the table, but now I can't insert anymore. If I go to Insert, Test 2, all right, that has been revoked. And similarly, I can't delete anymore. So if I press Escape and I try to delete a record, it won't let me do that either. So that's one way of doing it. Now, it can be really tedious to assign rights to every table, store procedure, view that you have. You have to do that for every view and store procedure. So a lot of people, what they do is they'll go into SQL Server, and I'm guilty of this too. They'll go into SQL Server, go into the security section, go to public, and the roles. Right-click on the role, select properties, and there on the properties you got the securables. Now, right now, if I go to General and I see DBO and I see all the ones there, and then in securables it shows me everything I have rights to in the database, right? Every single database. Now, if I go back up to the database itself, this is my database, RCPE security, and I go into roles here for that database, RCBE. Right-click on public properties. Securables. That's where I was before. I'm sorry, I got to switch this over. Let me go right down to the server level. Apologize for that. And then right-click, and then let me see properties. Double click on it. Yeah. I can grant everybody access to that role into the database. Let me just see when I have to do that. Securables. I think what I've done is I use code for that. So let me just show you the code I have already in my blog. That'll be a second link I want to share with you. and that is this blog post. Easily grant select to all tables or views in a database and or store procedures. So this goes on to explain how you can create the script into the server so that you can then run the security model of your choice, right? So read through the blog and you'll be able to see that. Let me just show you in the chat window where that link is. All right, so that's a link that will allow you to create a script. Here's a script that starts here, and you can run the script and then let it say, okay, you know what? I'm going to grant select to everyone who's in the into the public row, and you can then do that, right? So it's just a handy way for you to manage security with this. So the other aspect of this is I already revoked the privileges to the company. The second aspect of this is the domain security. Now I don't have a domain on my Surface. What I have is Impact Surface 2, which is the name of the machine, and I created these 3 groups already. So I'm going to walk you through how you can create a group on a domain, which is a little similar. So the first thing I'll do is I'm going to launch Explorer here. And I'm going to go to my computer and right-click and select this PC, and right-click and select Manage. And when I do that, it will bring up this window here, and then here I can go and look at the users and groups, right? So here I got users, and that's me right here, 1. And I got a 1, 2 in there, and then I got groups. Now, earlier today, I added admin read-only and users. So I'm going to right-click. I'm going to select a new group, and I'm going to call it the name of the database because, eventually you may have multiple databases, and I want to make sure that I identify that group is for that database. I'm going to call it managers. And I won't add anybody at this point to that. I'm going to click on create. And there's managers, right? So I got the group there. I have no members in that group. I go back to SQL Server, and the next step I'll do here is I'll add that login I just created to the security at the server level, not the database level, the server level. So I'm going to right-click, select New Login, and this is how you would add a new SQL Server login too. But notice it defaults to Windows Authentication. Now I'll click on Search, and I'll select Object Types, because I know beforehand this is not checked, right? So if you're trying to add a group, then you click on check the group. And then I'll just say Impact Surface 2, right, /RCBE_managers. And I click on check names. And I didn't like it, so I'm going to go, I'm going to click on Advanced and see if I can search for it here instead. And I'm going to say Object Types. That's already checked. Group still checked. That's good. And I'll click on Find Now. And these are all the accounts and groups already existing on my laptop. And then it's just a question of going down to RCPV managers, and there it is. I misspelled it, didn't I? No, managers. That's good. I'll click on OK. So if you a long login, long group name like this, you just go into Advanced and just search it that way. I click on OK. Now, when I do that, there's several things I can do. Number one, if there's server roles, if you assign somebody a sysadmin role, you give them the keys to the kingdom. Now they can open any database, create database. So you got to be careful with that. You don't want to do that. Or number two, you can do is here, you can, I get this message because some databases are no longer here. This is my development PC, so it's not 100% perfect. Number two, you can go to user mapping and select the database in question, which I'm going to do now. Hey, notice that it automatically checked DB owner, so I'm going to uncheck that. For some reason it does it, but notice it's in public, right? Everybody automatically gets added to public. Click on OK. It does give me the error message, but it does do it, so I'm going to show you. I'm going to click on Cancel here, and notice that it added the group. When I right-click in Properties, and I created the group in SQL Server, right, which is the SQL from Windows Security. And I go to user mapping, you'll see that here in user mapping that I've got the RCP database and it's public, right? So if I come here, RCP, and come over here. It's a public. Now, one other key to the kingdom that you can give away is DB owner. So if I do DB owner, that's the same thing as SA, but at the database level, right? So now they can modify tables, they can add views, so you pretty much have run of the farm, but that with that DB owner. So I want me to be careful not check that. I tend to shy away from these roles that exist already because they don't kind of work well with Access. Instead, I just use my own security model with this. So what I've done is I just said to server, here's a new group that's in my Active Directory. And by the way, I want them associated with this database. And for now, just leave them public. All right? So in order to then grant security to that user group, which you would come in and you would have to, of course, run statements. Now, earlier today I was playing around with this. I'm going to delete this and put in managers. Managers. And over here, managers, right? Sure. Okay. I'm also going to grant insert, right? So I'm going to grant insert. So here, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to grant insert. Now, because I am not a member of this group yet, even if I do the select and insert, it would not do anything for me because I'm not a member of that group, right? So if I were to come in here in the group, add myself, I can then, at that point, add myself to the group, and now I'm part of the group, and then click on OK. Now notice this, changes to user group membership are not effective until the next time the user logs in. So this may or may not work when I do that, but I'll go ahead and do that anyway. And now I'm part of that group, and so I can go into Access, and let's see if it lets me do test 2. No, still not let me do the test 2. Let me go ahead and close the table. We'll go back in. See, this is what I'm afraid of. It might ask me to, let me just press escape. There you go. I may have to log in, log out. I'm not going to do that because then I'll lose you guys. Let me try this one more time. See, that's the problem with that is that you have to log in, log out. So usually you would ask the person to log out and log in, and then he would have rights to the database, right? So let me just close. Let me just cancel this insert and do that. So that's how you would manage SQL Server security by going ahead and granting select and insert to your database groups, and then all you have to worry about is adding these members to that directory. So one aspect of this is this can be very cumbersome because now if you go into that particular table and I look up TBL companies, it's like properties and permissions, you'll see there's the managers, right? And here you see that the insert and the select are both enabled there, right? Not the update or delete. Those are different properties. So if you want somebody to be able to update a record, then you would need to grant them, right? So they can insert a new record, but they can't edit it. So if you don't remember to grant them the update right, then they won't be able to. They'll be able to add the record, but not update it after they've been added, which is kind of awkward because why not give them the update right if they can insert records, right? But still, it's available there, so you can do all that. All right. So so as you can imagine, a security model it can be cumbersome because now you got to run these grant, select, and delete statements throughout the database. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm actually going to use a code I have in my blog to show you how that code works, so that we can then do a mass update to the database for the public row, for example. Right, so I'm going to go ahead and go back to my blog here. So one of the things that you have is you have a series of declarations, so I'll just copy those. Paste that in there. And I don't know why I got these numbers, but I'll go with that. So at this point, what I've done is I've created a new query for a new query by clicking on the new button here. Yeah, and not new project, but new query. I press Control N, so that's how I did that. You can right click and select. You can select a new query at the database level right here, and that'll give you this window. Okay. And so here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to public. And so I set the login to public, right? And now I'm going to go grab the rest of the code in the blog post. All right. Okay. So here, what I've done is I declared a variable of type table, right? And it's going to have a column called integer column, right? One column called row ID, and the second one would be SQL string, right? So what's doing is creating a table in memory, which is a variable called views, and then I'm inserting into views. I'm going to say select grant select on name to login, and the name here is from sysobjects, right? Where type V, right? And set row ID. So let me just run this here to this point here. So then I'll tell it to. Then what it does is grabbing all the table names, right? So let me just grab this here. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So I'm going to grab this query here. This SQL statement, press Control N, and Control N is a Nancy, paste that in there. And then, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of this stuff. And just put in name. And I'm just going to run this, right? So all I'm going to do is select the name, right? And so what that does is grabs all the objects in your database where views, right? So these are views. All right, so I'm thinking that if I want to grab all the tables, I just change the table and run that again. Let's see if that works. No, tables don't work the same way. Let me see if store procedures do the same thing. No, that's not the same thing either. Now, if you follow a naming convention, then you can do a like, right? Where like table name, right? So let me just do that. Where name like, and then single quote percent TBL, and then percent, right? I'm sorry, TBL percent single quote. All right, so now it grabs all the tables that start with TBL. Right, so the TMS status, TBL estimate, TBL payment, TBL engine items, and so I'm sure there's a way that you can select from sysobjects all the tables, but I thought it would be with a T. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to modify the original script here, and the original blog post was views, so I'm going to replace that with the where clause here. So where name like TBL, and then in SQL Server, the wildcard is %, right? Okay. Okay, so what it does there is that it inserts everything in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this here, and I'm going to say select star from views. All right, and then I'm just going to only select this, and that should output to the window all that I put it into view. So if I run this, right, so grant select on, right, to public. So that's how it does. It fills that table with all these grant select statements into that table, and then the next thing it does, it actually executes each one of those tables by using this loop here, right? So I use this counter row ID equals 0, SQL string to nothing, empty string, excuse me, and then I do this cursor here, and then I start selecting each row in views, right, ordered by row ID, and then I open that cursor, and I fetch the next value into that cursor, and then here I check to see while fetch status equals 0, begin execute, and what I've done here is basically I've used this execute statement, and it executes all those select statements, all those grant selects in the table, right? So the secret sauce of this is you're building a SQL string, and you're executing it with the execute command there, and then goes and loops through the table and grabs the next one in that cursor, and it repeats itself, right? So I could say grant select, and then I can also add another one here. So let me go ahead and do that. I'll grab another. I'll tell it to grant select on table name, right? So I can repeat this for select, update, all that. So so let me do that. So insert to views, select from SysObject word name like table, right? All right, so here I'm going to improve upon my original blog post. So this is going to insert select statements, and then select right. And then next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it to do the same thing, but this time I'm going to say grant insert, right? Insert. And then this selecting this with I'm going to say grant update. And then the last one is grant delete. All right. So I got select, insert, update, and delete. Right. So if I run all that up to this one here, run just that to that table. Now I've got 260 rows, and as I go through this, I got the grant select, and I got the insert, and then I grant update and delete on those tables. All right. Good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to let it run completely. So I'll go ahead and comment out this select statement. And then I'll comment it out completely. And then when I go back into my TBL companies table, select properties and permissions, it should see, right, it should see public, and public's going to have all those properties. Right now it doesn't say anything. All right, so let me cross my fingers, run this. Okay, and it gets some error message here. It says incorrect success near delete because I may have misspelled it. Yeah, I did. So it doesn't matter. I can run this again. So let me just do that. So I'm going to change it to delete with one E. And then run the whole thing again. Okay, great. Now if I right-click on TBL companies, properties, permissions, there's the public row, and they've got delete, insert, select, and update. Wonderful. So let me go ahead and paste this into the chat window. Control C. What did I do? Okay, Control C. And paste that into the chat window. You can then copy it to your own database if you need that. All right, and it may have not pasted everything, so let me just see if it took everything in. Let's see, did it paste everything in the chat? Fix next from the in into, yeah, I missed something here, so let me just copy the rest that goes after the in. Okay, and then paste that in there. Okay, so that's the complete thing. So of course, if you want to revoke, that'll be a lot easier too. Now, a lot of SQL Server purists will tell you this is a bad thing, right? Because what you're building is a string that then gets executed by SQL Server. This is what's called SQL injection, right? This is the famous SQL injection where you go into a website when they're asking for your login and username, you can type grant blah 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 to. So, but this is as long as you do this internally and not save it anywhere or just do it somewhere else and paste it here, then you should be fine. So the topic of security is so prevalent these days, right? You have a lot of stories that you hear online about Home Depot being hacked and this other company being hacked. So, you know, security needs to be your first consideration when you do a proposal to a client or when you do a system or you design a system, right? What is the security model going to be? And so one of the models that I like to do is the ones I showed you here, where I've got these roles and the group with admins, right? That gets everybody gets anybody who's an admin goes in that group. And then you got users. So these are your power users, the people who can do almost everything except admin. And then you got read-only and managers. Now, honestly, sometimes I don't even have managers. I put managers in read-only, right? And that way they can run reports. They can look at dashboards. They're not allowed to create invoices and orders and anything like that. So the security model can be more granular where you have people who can create invoices, but they can't enter payments. And you got people who can enter payments, but they can't enter invoices, right? So you can have an AR and A, accounts receivable and accounts payable, AP, and put it that way, right? So it all depends on what is it trying to do with the application. You create these user groups, and this is a lot easier to handle with AD, but again, it does open the door as somebody who's tech savvy. You go in Excel and download the data, right, in Excel, so you got to be careful about that. All right? So that was pretty much what I wanted to do. The other thing is that there are a series of APIs that you can use in your Access database to read these groups, and if they're a member in that group, and then consequently grant them access to certain functionality in your Access program, right? So with the Access, you have somebody asked me, how do I determine the roles, right? The AccessUser belong to. Well, it usually is based on their business functionality, right? So if a person works in accounts receivable, I ask their manager, okay, does this person who receives payment to the system can create an invoice? No, they can't create an invoice. I don't want them creating an invoice, right? So then you would then define your security structure based on the functionality of the current company and what they're doing now currently, right? So you got to ask, you got to ask your client, hey, are they allowed to enter invoices? Are they allowed to pay invoices? And usually in big, larger corporations, they're segmented, right? So if you're accounts receivable, why do you need to create invoices? That's only the buyers can do that. How do you determine from your application what roles they are actually assigned to? Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Let me bring up Chrome here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for an API, right? Use Windows use Active Directory. Use Active Directory and Microsoft Access. And there's a series of code where you can use the code to call APIs and then bring in those APIs and query the Active Directory from your Access database, right? So what I do is when I launch the Active Directory, I have on the menu, I may have an admin functionality. So it's just add new user, add invoice type, right? The invoice status. There's certain things that only an admin should do. So the first thing I do when I launch my Access application is, are you an admin? Do you belong to the admin group, right? So I ask that through the Active Directory using APIs. And once the Active Directory says, yes, you're an admin, that gives you the keys to the kingdom, and everything opens up in the database. Otherwise, I lock you out, right? So, you can create some code that will check the Active Directory, right? And let's see here, is member security groups. All right, so we have this function called is member security groups. I believe this is where we got the code that we did that. And then get security groups. So if I want to know all the security groups you belong to, then you can do this. Let me send you this blog post. So we did not come up with the code for that. We got it off the web. And so I'll send you that blog post there. And so it's wonderful code, right? Because the first thing I'll do, okay, are you a member of the admin group, right? So I call this function, and then I'll do the group name. So let me see if I can just grab this here right from the blog. So here's the AD sample. I'll go ahead and download that, open it up. I think my computer is running really slow today for some reason. All right. So I'm not going to enable contact. We're going to go straight to the meat and potatoes of this by pressing Control G. There's the auto exec. Good thing I avoided that. All right. So then here, let's go ahead and look for that piece of code, right? That checks to see if you're a group member. So AGPI security. Okay. So is member security groups. All right, here we go. I'm going to compile this, see if it compiles. All right, great, it compiled. All right, so the argument is STR group name. Now, I belong to a series of groups, right? I belong to the manager group, right? So now I didn't reboot to log in, so it may or may not work. So let me just say question mark is member is a member of security group, and then I'll just grab that from my SQL Server. All right, RCP managers. Control C, come over here. Control V, double quote, closing parenthesis, and I'll break this here. Always want to break code that you download off the web. All right, so it looks like I'll have to enable that after us. Let me go ahead and click on enable and then hold down the shift key so it doesn't do the auto exec. All right, press Control G, back to here. Now, showing me this form. Don't want to see that. And let me just go to my module. Let me just close this. This is annoying. All right, security. Is member security groups. Break that. Okay. All right, so I'm press F8. All right. It's going to initialize an array. Because it's got to hold all the groups in there, right? And then it's going to catch the security group. LDAP, so it's using the LDAP commands. And it can hit an error message. Now, I don't have a proper security AD domain, right? I'm using my own local domain. So let's see what the error message says. Could be that. Okay, specified domain does not exist. All right, so what is the domain? Let me go ahead and press F8. I don't need to see the message box. All right, so here, let me go back to the top again. LDAP root DEC. I have no idea what this LDAP, it does, what that means or what the root is. So here, the root DSE, the root DSE is a special LDAP object that exists in all LDAP version 3 servers where you can write scripts that are independent of the domain or enterprise in which they run. Okay, ADS service by need is not available in Windows NT 4. This is older code, right? So, this may or may not work for my one, right? So, I got this fuser NT domain. Let me try that. This is really old code. All right, let me see if that helps. Right-click, definition. So, let's see here, call API copy memory, all right? So, let me just find out if it even recognizes my laptop. Fuser NT domain. Okay, F8. Copy memory. All right, function. Just going to grab a function. API copy memory. Now it's looping through the code. Microsoft account. All right, I do use Microsoft to log into Windows 10, right? So that is correct. I'm using a Microsoft login to log into the account. So the domain is Microsoft account and not Surface 2. So this is obviously code that you're going to need to work with and modify to work with your domain name. But once you have this code in place, then you can call the code and say, okay, are you a user of domain like I did here, right? Impact Surface 2 or CCB managers. You are? Oh, okay. Then you can see these buttons. So I'll hide and unhide buttons on there. Now, last month, if you were with us last month, I gave you an error. You guys showed you a technique using menus where you can hide and unhide menus in Access. You're similar to a web. You guys remember that? So let me see if I can bring it up here real quick. Let's see, impact, PST test, and let's see, menu example. Here we go. So I could use this menu example and with AD security to say, okay, I'm going to block you off of this menu because you're not a member of the admin group. And or I can show you only certain parts of the menu, right? And this example I'm using a tag property of the buttons to show and hide based on what your login. I'm enabling and disable, right? So one of this could be admin menu, and you only get to see the admin menu if you're a member of the admin group, right? So I can check to see when you click on admin and say, oh, are you a member of this group? If you're not, guess what? You don't get to see the menu. Or I may even block out this button altogether and then show it to you. So I had this. This is uploaded, and Lucy, if you can provide a link to last month's presentation where I discussed this, you can actually download this menu, this database off the Access User Group site and see how I do this. But basically, I'm using a tag property. I'm looping through all the controls in the form, and I'm enabling and disabling these menu items. So if you go into the design view for this form, you'll see it's just a bunch of command buttons here. Each one of these are command buttons. These overlap because this one's longer than the other one. All right, so that's pretty much it. I'm going to go ahead and open up to the floor now, and let me see if I can unmute you guys. Hold on a second while I do that. Leave me, stop screen sharing, audio connection. Let me see if I can go back to stop sharing, and that's the only way I know how to do this, and participant, and then unmute all. And I know that involves. All right, then we're back. So I'm going to open up the floor now if you have any questions at this time. There's Lucy, just put the link there. The last month's presentation, we can actually download the sample database. So if you want to go ahead and either speak a question, comment, have a comment for me, let me know. You have any questions you want to put in chat instead of talking to the microphone. You only can hear and not talk. Please use the chat option in WebEx. Did you guys like the presentation?
Yes. Very nice of you to do this.
All right, who have the pleasure of speaking with? Was that Karen?
This is Linda.
I think it's Linda.
Oh, Linda. Okay. Well, Linda, thank you very much. Appreciate the feedback.
Oh yeah, no, it's great. It's really great. You know, I'm really very happy every time I see that you're doing something. As far as slow, I have a web application using Access 2013. It's unbearably slow. I worked with George Hepworth on it. And he thought it was like almost unusable.
Yeah, and
it's not your computer necessarily.
Yeah, and I don't know what the future of web app says. I'm just happy they're back on the bandwagon. And I hear somebody, the microphone is open. There's somebody in the background on TV or something. Maybe you got the Republican debate going on.
Maybe somebody here is
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much for that. That's very. We do this out of labor of love. This is a lot of work.
Of course,
we do this
I know.
And I appreciate any feedback. And if you really do want to show me some love, which I hope you do, you can please tweet about the presentation.
Yes.
Go on LinkedIn, say about go into the Microsoft Access SQL Server group, leave a comment for me, and everybody know you guys missed out on an awesome presentation last night from Juan. And also on our Facebook page.
I haven't quite worked up to tweet yet, so I'm still a little behind.
All right. Well, my Twitter handle, if anybody is interested, is jsoto22.
Yes.
And then there is the MS Access with SQL Server group. And if you have not joined, please do so. And just we'll get you on there as a closed group, or we'd like to have all of you there join us.
Yes. No, it's great that you do this.
Thank you, Linda.
Oh.
All right. Anybody else has a question or issue they'd like to talk about? I'm going to open the floor to any question on Access. It doesn't have to be what we just talked about. So if you have any pressing Access issue or problem that you would like to talk about or comment, I appreciate it. Any participation. We got a great turnout tonight.